All right. So today we're going to be talking about the California recall. I got a couple of interesting little facts here I wanted to bring up about it, and then I'd open it up to the floor and see what we got on it as far as what you guys think.
Well, all right, go ahead.
No, you got something? Let's start right with it. What do you got?
Bring your facts first.
Yeah, bring your facts up first.
Okay.
I would like your facts.
So a couple of quick things. First one in 20 years. The last one actually led to Arnold being elected. That was 2003 through 2011 was Arnold's term.
Best thing that's ever happened to California.
You're probably not too far off, because he was
Governor.
actually one of the most liberal governors California's ever known.
He ran as a Republican.
Oh yeah, an ultra-conservative Republican. Actually, he ran as a middle-of-the-road
Yeah.
Republican. Winner will be in office until 2023. This is the big one. Could appoint a new U.S. Senator. Dianne Feinstein will be 90 by
Actually,
2023.
that doesn't apply anymore because we know that Larry Elder lost, or the recall lost.
Yeah, the way the recall actually works is if to get the recall started, you have to have 12% of turnout for the last gubernatorial election. So when they voted Gavin Newsom in, 12% of the amount of people that voted in that election, that's the threshold that they have to reach. It ended up being 1.5 million. And they ended up getting 1.7 million signatures. But funny thing about that is they were able to get a 4-month extension because of the Rona. The only way they were able to make that number is because they were able to get an extension on signatures. And it was only 1.5 billion people, or I'm sorry, million people.
Yeah.
And you know, California's like 40 million people.
Right.
So I just thought that was funny. They basically got twice as much time to get the signatures.
Well, I mean, I'm sure Rona did
Oh yeah.
make getting signatures harder than normal.
What I was going to say in the beginning was, and I think there's a lot of people like me where, why did he get recalled? I know that there was this whole fiasco of him being at a fucking restaurant. It was called the French Laundry, while the whole state was on lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that can't be the only thing, right?
No, I mean, I can list off quite a few.
Of course, yeah. Go ahead.
I mean,
I got a
I'm
couple
here
things
for,
here
right?
as well, but
Where's
yeah.
the opposition? So he also like shut down lots of businesses, but
Mhm.
like his own winery, his family's winery, he gave like an exemption to where they didn't have to shut down.
Yeah, deemed
Hollywood he
crucial.
gave exemptions to where they could do things like there's a famous video of a lady who owned a restaurant and she wanted to dine outside, and they shut her down. Like, no, you can't have dine outside. And then literally right next to her restaurant in the parking lot, Hollywood set up this huge crafting where they were like shooting and they were able to dine outside. And she's like, why are they able to, like, she's like literally filming it, like they're set up right here,
Right.
and I'm not allowed to run a restaurant and like serve people outside, things like that. But yeah, the economy was, really bad. The homeless
lockdowns.
problem is out of control.
But the homeless problem has been out of control for
Sure.
decades. It's
Yeah,
not just
yeah.
solely his problem.
Yeah, well, I'm just
And the
bringing up
can
problems
the can
that.
gets kicked down the road from one governor to the next. And
Yeah,
it's-
well, and that.
but that's
that,
part of it, yeah.
Like Newsom is, just
Things
like
they can
it's
throw into
musical
the
chairs,
fire.
like
Yeah.
them at the end, where it's gotten to that tipping point where they were hoping, but California is an extremely deep blue state, so the
It's
recall happening was against all odds. I mean,
Well, I got a couple funny more things about the recall.
Alexander with a 38% were voted to recall Newsom, and they need 50%, so they're 12% off. But and then Larry Elder would have won if they would have gotten the 50% threshold.
It's
Yeah,
true.
by
It
far.
does go to whoever received the most amount of votes
Yeah, after
after.
once
Yeah.
they vote to recall.
Yep. And I'm not sure how it ended. I will say that Larry Elder was about to get it if it would have gone through. It was 2-1 against the recall for it. But every governor for the last 60 years has had recall, at least started against them. And this would have been the only one in history, the second one, since it started in 1911, if it would have gone through.
Yeah. No, and they ended up with 38% of the state saying they wanted to recall, but where they were expecting, because usually Democrats if they're not motivated to go out and vote, they won't. But they had a bigger than expected turnout of Democrats supporting Newsom than they thought they would.
Yeah.
Well, I from what I heard and read here and there, a couple of things that went against the Republicans were that they were, against face masks, non-mandatory vaccines.
They were against mandates, so
Yeah,
they weren't.
well, but that's however you want to classify it or put it together. Those things are
But there is a
popular
distinction there.
in California.
Yeah.
If
True.
in what
Mitigation
Newsom,
measures they
well, in the thing what
Yeah.
Newsom was doing, he was saying, hey, look at these red states like Florida and Texas, how they have an increase in COVID cases and this and that. Do you want that here?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah,
kind of
but
backfired on
do you want
Republicans.
Trump
But like
policies.
California did
Right.
have increases, just like Florida, which
I-
is what Larry Elder and stuff was saying, is that like the shutdowns weren't working, they never did work.
Uh-huh.
Larry Elder is for face masks, he's for vaccines, he is against mandates,
Mhm.
but private businesses absolutely can require face masks. He never had a problem with that. He's purely against vaccines. But to your point, there was a lot of Democrats that, yes, the optics, they did show up to vote against Larry Elder because they were solidly in favor of a lot of those things. I do agree with you there. And they were hoping as many Democrats wouldn't show up because they just either didn't care or maybe they were sick of it, but they weren't going to show up to vote. They just weren't going to vote at all.
Well, yeah, I think in any other scenario that would have happened, but because from what Trump did, and so now that's become a huge dragging force for Democrats to go out and vote. It's like, hey,
Well,
No,
to that.
do you want this to happen again? Because
That was how
Democrats-
he actually ran.
Right.
Is he was saying, "Oh, it's the Trump lies," and to that point, the Republican lobby and Larry Elder were already complaining about fraud in the election before the vote took place.
Yeah,
They also
that's
have.
pretty standard for elections now.
Well, it's
on
pretty
both
standard for
sides.
conservatives. in
No,
elections
it's both
now.
sides. I remember the governor, Stacey
Abrams. What year was that
refused.
again?
That was in Georgia.
I
She
said
still-
what year, not where.
Literally 2 years ago. Like,
Mm,
yeah,
mm,
yeah, like it was extremely recent.
Are you saying
she
if we-
was introduced by the DNC at their for this last election? She was introduced as the real governor of Georgia because
Well-
they still say that there was enough fraud in that election that she should have been governor, even though she lost by hundreds of thousands of votes.
Well, I don't think fraud is what they were saying was the
No,
problem
that
with
is
it.
literally, they
I
said
think they were
suppression
saying
of
voter
voting,
suppression
which
is different than fraud.
Well, it's-
fraud's
it's one
illegal
side-
votes
yeah.
that are cast. Voter suppression is stopping people that are
Yeah.
legally
Yeah.
allowed
Which
to vote from voting.
it
There's
counts
a
the same
big
thing where
difference.
you're saying that there was
No,
a
no.
conspiracy to
No,
change
see,
the vote.
There are no alternative facts here. Because
No.
fraud is a way.
Fraud is like illegally
Right,
casting a
me
vote.
casting your vote and saying I'm you.
Yeah,
that's
but
fraud.
So
Suppression-
African Americans overrepresented in that election. They were not suppressed. They had a higher percentage of votes than any other minority group. There's no evidence, absolutely none, that their votes were suppressed. And yet they will still say it, just like there are Republicans, I do agree, that would say that there is fraud
If you say
without evidence.
right.
And I don't think
But
there's
to
evidence
say
of massive fraud.
Yeah, to
That
say
means-
fraud and voter suppression
I
is the
agree,
same
there is a
thing.
difference in
Right.
kind, but essentially it means the same thing, that you're accusing the other party of rigging the game in their favor. And that's
Now,
pretty
rigging
standard
the
for
game,
elections.
I would say yes.
Yeah.
Because, the Republicans love to use gerrymandering.
Yeah.
Whereas
Both parties.
Both parties do.
both
That's
parties
right.
do, yeah, but
I mean,
that's a form of
yeah.
rigging the game as well.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's not fraud because it's not illegal to
Mhm.
do those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, I think the sticking point on this one, Garrett, is fraud and voter suppression, while in your mind may surmount to the same thing, calling the other side out for shenanigans. There's a very big difference between what fraud is
definitionally,
and what.
yes, I agree with you.
Not definition. Voter suppression is stopping people who should be able to vote from voting. Voter fraud is illegally casting votes.
I
Those
agree.
are two completely
I agree. By
separate
definition,
things.
they're two different things.
Yeah, they may
Like,
be used very similarly.
Yeah, I'm just
rhetoric.
making the point that both sides use their particular brand of whatever like for Republicans they say it's voter fraud, for the Democrats they say it's voter suppression. There's no evidence of either, and both parties do more than they should claim these things, even though there's no evidence of either.
I think there's more evidence of voter suppression than there is of voter
Well,
fraud.
That's true. There's no argument in that one because there's all kinds of voter suppression. There's very little, if any, voter fraud.
It's hard to measure voter suppression. Fraud is when you find ballots like that are fraudulently made. Like it's easy to prove.
Like there was that case where this guy, I don't know what state, took his dead mother's voting card and wrote it in for her.
Yes,
and sent it in. That's voter fraud.
That's voter fraud. Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
And then that kind of evidence in our system is very little.
Yeah.
There's
practically
not much.
I agree.
Now, but we can't say that there's zero voter fraud because
there's voter fraud.
Yeah, we also don't really look a lot for voter fraud because most of voter fraud happens in local elections. It's harder to affect like the presidential election because you don't know where you need the votes. A lot of voter fraud happens in local elections where literally 12, 15 votes can actually matter to these like county clerk or whoever's running, and they found a lot of small elections just on a small scale.
Well, I can see what you're saying. Local elections are probably a lot easier to rig, and
they are, and there's a lot more.
But,
there's a lot less.
We're not talking.
On as well.
You're talking like
exactly
county recorder for God only knows where.
Yeah,
we're not talking about like senator seats.
No, yeah,
governors or mayors.
And that's where there's very little evidence of because in order for fraud to even matter in those elections, they have to prove that the fraud would have affected the outcome.
Yeah, would have affected.
Like when a lot of the lawsuits got thrown out of court, it wasn't because there wasn't evidence of fraud. It was just that evidence wouldn't amount to actually changing the outcome of the election.
So little actual fraud in the election that it has no effect on the outcome of the election.
But I think
they're talking about literally out of millions of votes, a handful of fraudulent votes.
Yeah, I mean,
and they find literally like all of them. And that's the thing, is it's always, like you said, it's always somebody voting for a dead relative because you have 1 year before they fall off of the records, right? Because once you're dead at the end of the year, it gets shuffled around the computer.
Well, that's the other thing, and I think I've heard you bring that up before, is they don't recycle, because there's like dead people on the voter registry.
Depends on the state.
Well, they do. Every state does.
Well, some do and some don't. Like sometimes, they're on there for years.
Years is like it's like an election cycle. It's not like for 4 decades. Oh, my dead relative has been.
Yeah.
It's like from one election to the next. So that's like 2 years.
And we could say, there's always room for improvement.
Yes, nobody's in arguments with that.
Yeah.
Anything can always be done better.
Yeah. Well, the hypocrisy is, Democrats will say, voter fraud doesn't matter because it's not enough numbers, but to their thing, it's like, well, if one person's vote is suppressed because you have a certain amount of standards that you have to prove who you are to vote, then that person should not be disenfranchised. It's like, look, you can't go both ways.
Think about it like this:
if one fraud vote matters, like it's 1 and 1. Like, and it's such an easy common ground, and this is what drives me crazy. Like, it's such a common sense common ground where we can all say, look, you have to prove who you are when you vote. Every country does it. It would stop, the voter fraud, and it's not voter suppression.
Well, but I would again argue that point
things.
in a couple of things. For one, even to register to vote, you have to show a picture ID to a government agent. You usually do it when you get your driver's license.
Depends on the state.
If you look up the requirement for every state,
some you only need to come with a utility bill. Now, I agree.
No. To register to vote, not to actually cast a
yes,
ballot.
but nobody they don't always check ID at the ballot box, so they
you don't need to check ID at the ballot box because if you're a registered voter, your vote can only be counted once. Yeah. So if Ulysses went and voted 3 times in the same election, he would one, get in trouble because they would catch his vote 3 times, but it would only be counted once. They might actually not count his vote at all.
Yeah, but
because it would
what
come
if
up as a
somebody is
problem.
stealing his ID and then casts a vote in his name,
And then
it's already been, so his vote gets thrown out?
No,
for
because
reason.
then he goes and votes, and then because there's a problem, both votes would be taken down.
Exactly.
Then there's
but
a
that
period.
takes away Yuli's vote, because if you're voting for different people.
No, because then there's a rectification period where you can call up or you can get on the website, and if there's a problem with your vote, you have a chance to make it right.
Because I vote through mail,
Yeah, I vote by mail.
and they do have a website that you can go and check to see if your vote has been counted or not.
Yep.
Or if there's any discrepancies.
Yeah,
on
in
there.
Arizona, we do mail-in ballots pretty well.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because we're a
Because we've
heavily
been doing it
conservative
for a
state
long time.
with an elderly population, and it makes so much more sense. Like,
Do you think we still have a bigger elderly population than?
Well,
Florida's the biggest, but we still have a.
I know we
not
have
but just within our state.
Well,
I
yeah,
feel like
I think it's abnormal.
It's starting to.
Yeah,
Well, I hate
you're
to
right,
use the
because
word
there's so many
limit.
people moving in that
Yeah.
it's
Starting to
kind of
blend.
balancing more.
No,
starting to
but-
mix.
It's starting to die off. No, I'm just
No, that's the problem. They're not.
the air's too clean.
The hot take.
I don't think. Yeah, well, I think a lot of the benefits from moving to the valley for old people back in the day, the
Was-
dry air,
Right.
all these things have kind of been negated by so many people moving here. Because
They're
there's
bringing
probably
their native plants.
flora, fauna. It's a
Yeah.
lot more humid.
Because you used to come here
It's
to
a
get
lot
away
hotter.
from
all that
all the
stuff.
allergies.
Yes.
allergies
Yeah.
and right.
But cost of living is relatively inexpensive out here
It's
compared
very
to
cheap.
a lot
Oh,
of
absolutely.
other larger
California,
metropolitan
Chicago.
areas. So a lot of
New
people
York.
would retire here just because you sell your $1 million home in California, your 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 800 square foot, and you come out here and you buy a $500,000 mansion, and then you got $500,000 in the bank, you know, and it's like you own it outright.
But yeah, I think that is becoming more rare, and there's so many young people moving to Arizona.
Yeah, again, just because cost of
I
living.
mean, our biggest demographic moving here used to be like elderly, and now it's all young people moving there.
That's what we need.
But yeah, I mean, it's there's good and bad in that.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, ultimately, yeah, you don't want a state that's unbalanced heavily. Like Florida has the highest percentage of elderly
Senior citizens.
Yeah, and then I think it's.
Oh. Just a couple more funny things before we move on. Newsom got caught at a lobbyist's birthday party.
Oh, and I got one too after,
Okay.
which was the Bizarro World Rose McGowan coming out and endorsing Larry Elder out of left field.
Yeah, she's just trying to stay relevant.
Did you see that though? It
I
was,
saw the headline for it. I didn't read the article though. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, this is so stupid.
No, like it
Who
was
gives
funny.
a shit?
No,
Rose McGowan.
to her point, like her speech was actually pretty good. Like she's definitely crazy, and it's
Well,
it's
you know,
funny, but like Hollywood, like you can tell, like Hollywood is like made her crazy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just
And-
like all of her
Well, yeah.
experiences there.
well,
But
but
she
think
was
about-
talking about how like, you know, she's worked in the upper echelons of like different lobbying groups in Washington, and how alike both parties are when
Yeah.
it comes to like lobbying and all the bullshit in Washington. And she supported Larry Elder not because he was a Republican, but because like she really felt like he's a moral person, and you know, you may not agree with his ideas, but you know, and she actually accused Gavin Newsom's current wife, of trying to bribe her before the story of Weinstein came out. And
Oh, 'cause
like,
she was one
what
of the
will it
victims,
take
yeah.
to make you happy? And so that was kind of a bombshell too. So that, and she did bring up the point that, you know, all my life, like, you know, I've been against Republicans, but when I look back at my life, like, everybody that's ever hurt me was a Democrat. So that was kind of an interesting point.
Yeah, but see,
Well, but that's not a point in the
I know.
of Republicans. It just means that both, like, you can't base, you know, everything on just who's what party. Like,
well,
you need
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I don't like Republicans and Democrats. That's stupid.
Yeah.
I like liberals and conservatives because there's conservative Democrats and there's liberal Republicans.
that's fair.
And so I'm more ideology than party because think of like Joe Manchin or like what cinema claims to be. oh, you know, I'm middle of the road. Oh, I'm a conservative Democrat.
Right.
So no, I don't like that. I like conservative. I like liberal. I like those kind of actual, you know, denominators or whatever.